Hello to my beautiful listeners. We've covered some serious subjects so far in these articles. We started out with the trilogy, How Not to Be a Nazi, where we broke down the history, the politics, and the religion of the Israeli-Palestinian conflicts to reach some grounded conclusions. Then I called out Tucker Carlson for turning into a full-on propagandist for Putin. We took a lighthearted turn in the series, A Few of My Favorite Things, where we talked about what is so wonderful about old movies, podcasts, and new technologies. This led to my next series, A Few of My Least Favorite Things, where we unmasked the epidemic levels of gaslighting, internet celebrities, and the rotting ideology behind sanctuary cities. In Speaking the Hard Truth series, I called out Candace Owens for using her Christianity as a weapon for her politics. And I fought fire with fire, exposing what the Bible actually says about how Christians like her are told to treat Jews. Then we dove into the shocking details of the fentanyl epidemic. And we finished by taking an unflinching look at DEI programs and their results, and concluded that DEI must die for true equality and freedom to survive. In our last trilogy, we examined what is a leader by remembering what one looks like as we looked at the magnificent life of Winston Churchill. Then we searched for leaders in the present and found Mossab Hassan Youssef, the son of one of Hamas's co-founders, who is boldly speaking the truth right in the face of the cancel mob trying to silence him. We finish with a hopeful glance at the future by looking at some promising schools that are doing it right, like Acton Academy. And we've searched for the hope that can be found in today's dark headlines, full of venomous anti-Semitism. This week, I thought we could do with another lighthearted subject. But it still has some heart. We are spending so much time arguing about the right way to live and about everything that is wrong with the world, things seemingly too complicated to solve, that we are quickly forgetting the point to being alive in the first place. What is living all about? Do we even remember anymore? Can we even relate to our forefathers who sailed off the edges of the map to cannibal islands and the crushing ice of Antarctica just for the sake of finding out and living an adventurous life? Would we have it in us to do what our great-grandparents did and leave the only world we knew to sail to the other side of the globe with one suitcase of belongings and start a whole new life as an immigrant in a world that might not be any better than the one you left? Would we have the heart to set off in a covered wagon into hostile and wild lands to carve out a home and build the American dream with our own two hands? Could we storm the beaches of Normandy as everyone around us fell in a rain of machine gun fire? Have we permanently forgotten what life is? What it's all about? What we are meant to be? Don't we realize how short it all is? How finite and singular? Are we so numbed to life by the hypnotic devices in our hands that we've forgotten how to bask in the sensation of warm sunlight soaking into our skin, breathing in clean, sweet air as a cool breeze blows across our face, all under a big blue sky spanning a vivid world where birds still sing nearby, just as they always have? How do we get back to that? How do we set aside all the things that weigh us down and constantly pull at us? How do we not let the headlines drown our souls in hopeless darkness? How do we not let internet trolls penetrate below the surface of our skin? And most important of all, how do we not give in step by step and end up just like them, hurling poisonous darts at strangers to make ourselves feel better? Allow me to share a quote from a Robin Williams film. His character tells a group of students, quote, "We don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we are members of the human race. And the human race is filled with passion. Medicine, law, business, engineering, these are all noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for. To quote from Whitman, "O me, O life, of the questions of these recurring, of the endless trains of the faithless, of cities filled with the foolish, what good amid these, O me, O life? Answer, that you are here, that life exists and identity, that the powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse. That the powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse. What will your verse be?" End quote. What things do we live for? What feeds the healthy, thriving parts of our soul, not the despondent, lost parts? Well, one of those things, one thing we've forgotten how to appreciate, a thing which Robin Williams so brilliantly gave us, is laughter. We have forgotten how to laugh. Seriously. Every time any comedian makes a joke, it's broken down, analyzed, dissected, discussed and rediscussed as though it's meant to be taken seriously, and when absolutely everything funny about it has been tortured and killed, we move on to the next thing that could have brought us some relief via a moment of levity. We pretend that everything in life is supposed to be taken seriously, and we examine everything with that seriousness. We actually have to be reminded it's a joke, something that previous generations would have just understood and laughed at before moving on. Present generations are being raised to evaluate everything non-stop. They don't even know how to identify something as funny. And if you point it out to them, they don't know how to respond. They don't know how to laugh. All day long they cry, "That's not funny." But how would they know? Have they ever said, "That is hysterical"? They don't even understand the concept. They don't understand that funny isn't supposed to be serious. That's not to say that humor can't coexist with truth. On the contrary, humor requires a kernel of truth at its heart. The truth is framed in a ridiculous and more palatable way, and we acknowledge the absurdity of it and laugh at ourselves. But if you treat humor like it's a lecture, you miss the entire point. You miss the joy of a good laugh, a break from all the endless seriousness, and you miss the insights. So many comedians' shows these days are just one long lecture instead of an hour of breathless laughter. Even the mildest jokes always send someone into showy tears or indignant offense. Why do we cling so desperately to our precious seriousness? Quote, "A happy heart is good medicine, and a cheerful mind works healing, but a broken spirit dries up the bones." Quote, "To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance." Quote, "Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh." Or last, quote, "The spirit of a man can endure his sickness, but as for a broken spirit, who can bear it?" Is it any wonder that we're drowning in depression and have record highs of mental illness? Look at what we're doing to ourselves. And yes, these are Bible verses, But if you don't put any stock in them spiritually, then think of them as 2,000 plus year old sayings with a wisdom that stood the test of time. Or, if you're someone who thinks the Bible shouldn't be used in a conversation about humor, do you really think God doesn't have a sense of humor? One question. Explain the duck-billed platypus. It's okay to laugh. People focus on the morality of hitting up or hitting down. It's okay to make fun of someone who's more powerful than you, because that's hitting up. But it's wrong to make fun of someone below you, because that's hitting down. I had a brother with Down syndrome. He was my other half growing up. And he was the funniest person you'd ever meet. Amazing memory, quick wit, and completely capable of laughing at himself or you. When someone called him retarded, he would answer back, "I'm not retarded. You retarded." Which fits really well with the whole truth humor construct when you think about it. Like a comedian recently said of people's pity for his Down syndrome niece, "She's great. She's better than you. She's happy. She's having a good time." Today, you aren't supposed to use certain words, as though the syllables themselves carry some inherent evil, instead of realizing that it's the intentions of the person using them that makes it ugly. Criticize the intention, not the word. It's just a word. But today, it's considered hitting down. Excuse me? What on earth makes you arrogant enough to believe that my brother was beneath you? That is what hitting down means. So many of these politically correct concepts are far more offensive in their thinking than the things they are trying to eliminate. And most of the time, the people coming up with these rules on behalf of others have never even bothered to meet or get to know them. Let's give ourselves permission to take breaks from being serious all the time. Permission to laugh and breathe and not feel guilty about it. We need to push back against the unhealthy rigidity of killjoys who refuse to give themselves this gift and insist on stripping it from the rest of us. The next time you see someone posting a sermon on why a joke is serious, try pointing out how ridiculous they are being. I recently saw a post by a mother talking about how much fun she was having bonding with her 13-year-old daughter over reruns of The Vampire Diaries. Someone responded with a plea that she sit down and discuss just how unhealthy Damon and Elena's relationship actually was, so that her daughter wouldn't model her own relationships on them. This is exactly why kids don't want to spend time with adults like that. Not to come down too harsh on someone who probably meant well, but which part was your first clue that this wasn't a healthy relationship? Was it the part where she fell in love with a serial-killing vampire who, although hot, I'll take my own advice and laughingly admit that I smoldered for the smolder holder in my day, who was her ex's brother? Or was it the fact that he was just as likely to eat her as to make love to her? Maybe it was the happy life she led, the one where her parents died, her aunt died, her guardian died, her best friend died, repeatedly in fact, her little brother died, and she died. Even Damon got trapped on the other side and died. What part of that requires an explanation that this isn't a perfect life to base your own on? Apart from the obvious, where you can't have a vampire boyfriend because vampires aren't real. It's a TV show. It's fun. It's a fantasy, an escape, not a self-help book. They aren't the same thing. Stop treating them like they are. That's the whole problem. Someone I once knew constantly warned others not to let their little girls watch Disney films. They had given her really unrealistic expectations that set her up for all kinds of unhappiness. Once again, which part of these films made you think they were real life? They're fairy tales. Didn't being dressed by birds, having designer clothes made for you by a fairy, as mice did your chores, give it away? Now Disney itself has lost all perspective, slapping warning labels left and right on the same products that made them into what they are in the first place. Prince Charming was a creepy stalker. Ursula's purple skin has underlying racial stereotypes. And Tinkerbell has unhealthy romantic attachments to Peter Pan. Seriously, lighten up, people. I recently heard a funny roast of Star Wars fans who habitually complain about how Disney has ruined the franchise, which is true, but who still buy the tickets. So, I thought I'd share the laugh. After mocking the TV cartoon, where the villain kills a non-binary Jedi and then says, of this single victim, let them die. So the villain just killed this guy and callously leaves him to die while respecting his pronouns, as all moral villains do. They do understand that villains do bad things, right? It's kind of what makes them villains. Quote, she says, let them die. She doesn't care if the non-binary Jedi dies, and yet, even as she expresses that level of disdain, she makes sure to respect the pronouns. So, she'll leave you to wither and die, cold and alone and forgotten in the dirt, but she would never dream of using a pronoun you don't like. End quote. He went on to compare the fans who keep going back, even as the new director revels in telling them that she, quote, likes making men feel uncomfortable with her storylines. So he continues, why is anyone still watching any Star Wars related product? It sucks. It's bad. There's no denying that all Star Wars content since the original trilogy has been mediocre at best, and often quite a bit worse than mediocre. So, if you're keeping track at home, that means that Star Wars was good, arguably, for about 6 years. And it's been bad for 40 years. 40 years of badness. How many years of badness do you need? Can you finally admit that maybe we can move on from Star Wars? If you went to a restaurant in 1983 and had a delicious meal, but every meal you've had at that restaurant since then has tasted like reheated dog vomit, would you still be going to that restaurant? How much garbage would you let that place shovel into your mouth before you got the message? At what point does everyone stop eating at that restaurant that has served nothing but bad food for 40 years straight? The original chef who made the good meal 40 years ago doesn't even work there anymore. He's gone. And even he forgot how to cook before he left. And now there's nobody in the kitchen that knows how to cook. They can't even work the stove. I mean, they're serving you food out of cans, heating it up in the microwave. Even worse, as they serve the bad food that they heated up in the microwave, they lecture you. It's been that way for 20 years at least. And they hate you. All of the employees openly despise you. They will happily take your money and wag their finger in your face and scold you and serve you a bowl of microwaved canned corn and charge you exorbitant amounts of money for it. Like the food isn't even bad in an imaginative way. It's It's not even like they're trying to cook up new, interesting culinary creations and failing. They're not even trying to be creative. They're just serving up the same slop over and over and over again, and they're doing it with a scowl. They're coming over and just ladling out the microwave corn and cussing in your face like, I hate you. I despise you. You piece of garbage. Here's your corn. And you're sitting there like, thank you. Well, how much will that be? Oh, $67? Well, sure. Here's a 40% tip as well. He finished. I think the point has been made. Star Wars is bad. The quality is bad. The writing is bad. The acting is bad. Even the special effects have gotten worse over time somehow. Star Wars has been bad for longer than I've been alive. And now it's hopelessly woke on top of it. The whole franchise is owned by people who hate the audience and hate the material they've been entrusted with. There's no conceivable incentive for anyone to watch any Star Wars content again. I'm not saying boycott, I'm just saying, why? Don't. There's nothing enjoyable about this. Stop doing it. Have some self-respect. Say no to Star Wars. In the words of the Star Wars character in that clip, let them die. Just like Who's on First, it's funnier to watch than to read a transcript, but you get the idea. It's true, which is what makes it funny. So let's have a good laugh at ourselves and move on. But I did want to share some interesting shifts regarding attitudes toward Disney. According to a recent poll, 71% of American adults believe that Disney should return to producing, quote, wholesome programming for children and allow parents to decide when to introduce discussions about sexuality. 12% disagreed, and 10% strongly disagreed, which means that 22% of Americans are actively for unwholesome children's programming, where kids are introduced to sexuality by random strangers instead of their parents who know them best. This poll shows that 20% have shifted their opinion on this in the last 2 years. Back in 2022, the numbers were 45%, not 71%, with 28% supporting Disney's present agenda. Though these supporters fell from 28% to 22%, the main rise in the numbers of their opposition came from the previous 18% who didn't see it as an issue one way or the other, and an additional 10% who were unsure what they thought about it. All but 2% of these groups, meaning 28% of people polled, have been convinced in just 2 years to go, quote, far right, or as we used to call it, moderates, while 6% of the far left has slid towards unsure. This is a perfect example of what is happening across the board on all public issues. The left is becoming too extreme for moderates to go along with anymore. It's just crazy. But the left refuses to address this reality, blindly pushing even further left and ever more woke, trusting to shaming and scolding, and they're losing the middle ground, who are left with nowhere to go but right. What about subjects that aren't really a laughing matter? There are obviously such subjects. The Holocaust, for example, isn't a subject for jokes. Yet, one of my favorite quips was when Robin Williams answered a German woman interviewing him, who had asked him why the German people didn't have many good comedians. Fast as a snake bite, he quipped, "Did you ever think maybe it's because you tried to kill all the funny people?" It was quick, barbed, and true. It didn't make fun of Holocaust victims. It made fun of the lack of self-awareness of the perpetrators. Did it use stereotypes? If by stereotypes you mean the reality that a lot of comedians are Jewish, then yes. What's wrong with that? Likewise, people have been very upset by the former VP hopeful Kristi Noem's story about shooting her dog Cricket 20 years ago. Animal abuse or cruelty isn't funny either. Putting down a dog if it's a danger to others, especially children, is a difficult situation. But to execute an overly enthusiastic 14-month-old puppy for ruining a hunt and killing a few chickens by shooting it is overkill. Why Kristi Noem chose to bring this up in today's dog-loving society, I cannot comprehend, but she did. Then she doubled down. She went on every news show that would have her to defend this story, supposedly a story that showed that she could make tough decisions. Then she followed up this story by volunteering that she also shot her goat for smelling bad and chasing her kids. These interviews only exposed her for inventing another story about meeting Kim Jong-un, which she claimed to handle well since he underestimated her. And as a Sunday school teacher, she was, quote, used to dealing with little tyrants, she said. But she just couldn't surrender to the unanimous backlash and accept that it was over. She had destroyed her chances of being VP. All the interviews in the world wouldn't change that. To quote Coming to America, "The girl doesn't like you anymore. Can't you get that through your greasy head?" But even though the original topic of when it is and isn't appropriate to euthanize a pet and the acceptable ways to do it wasn't funny, her persistent mishandling of the whole situation was. She earned her roast fair and square. Quote, she included the antidote in her upcoming book entitled No Going Back. Ironic. This book was supposed to be her ticket to the White House, but now she'll have to settle for being a part-time Fox News contributor, which is where her career would have ultimately ended up if she became vice president. So you might say this just gets her to the ultimate destination much more efficiently and quickly. But in any event, it turns out that the story of her poor deceased dog is not the only strange detail that she, or more precisely, her ghostwriter, included in the book. After Noem's unsuccessful attempt to skirt the issue about not meeting Kim Jong-un, he continued, so she says she's not going to talk about any specific meeting with world leaders, except that in her book, she does talk about a specific meeting, one with Kim Jong-un. The problem is that any vaguely aware person will know that the communist dictator of North Korea probably isn't holding any meetings with the governor of South Dakota. Because why? And when Noem was asked whether that meeting happened, all she will say is that it was brought to her attention, and so it will be changed in the book. Well, what was brought to her attention? Did someone bring to her attention the fact that she never actually met the leader of North Korea? Or did someone bring to her attention the fact that this claim was made in her book? If the former, then how could she not have known that she didn't actually meet the leader of North Korea? And if the latter, how could she not have known that this claim was made in her book? Obviously, the book was ghostwritten. I mean, no great scandal there. But did she really not even read her own book? Well, we know she read it, because she's the narrator on the audiobook. So we're left with two possibilities. Either she knowingly lied about meeting Kim Jong-un and just assumed that nobody would call her on it, or she thought she met him, only to find out later that she didn't. It all adds up to the most awkward, cringiest kickoff to a book tour that we've probably ever witnessed. And it's not over. This exchange about North Korea and the question of whether Noam has ever actually met Kim Jong-un or been to North Korea, or whether she knows where North Korea is or what it is, continues, all while Noam refuses to admit that any mistake was made. Even though she says the thing that she won't admit is a mistake, it's being changed nonetheless before it's released. Wait, what? I'm not going to have that conversation because I think it's important. So then, wouldn't you want to have the conversation because it's important? And again, if you don't want to talk about personal meetings, why is it in your book? She actually said, "Governor, did you lie about what's in your book?" Well, the book is very, very good. It's a very, very good book. So, translation, I didn't write my book or read it until I did the audiobook, but I was tuning myself out for most of that. And if I did notice any problems, I figured it was too late to bring it up. And I just hoped that nobody else would notice, which is a safe bet because Republican politicians, especially ones that are associated with or hope to be associated with Donald Trump, rarely encounter any scrutiny at all. So, of course, why couldn't you get away with just flagrantly making up events in your book? This brought us finally to the infamous story of poor Cricket. I don't ask anybody else to take on my responsibilities. When there is a dog to kill, I do it myself, and I like it. Damn it, I like it. I actually would have respected her more if she had just said that. Like if she had just said, "Look, I wanted to kill a dog, so I killed it. I kill animals all the time. What are you going to do about it?" I'd be alone in this, but personally, I would have respected that a little bit more. It still would be pretty weird, but... Although now, given the made-up Kim Jong-un story, I'm seriously starting to wonder whether Cricket even existed. It's possible that she never killed any dog, and that her ghostwriter made that up too. And maybe Noam didn't want to admit that it was all made up, so she just, went with it. That's at least a possibility at this point. And that's not the only animal execution recounted in her memoir. Soon the conversation turned to the goat that also crossed Kristi Noem and didn't live to tell about it. First of all, don't bring Donald Trump into this. He's got enough issues. You don't need to rope him in. But I'm sorry, let's just back up for a moment. So, she killed the goat on the same day that she killed the dog? I don't think we knew that. At least I didn't. She was hyped up on adrenaline, filled with bloodlust, looking for something else to kill, and she happened to see that punk-ass goat by the barn and just decided to take him to the same gravel pit that, at this point, I guess, was covered in blood and just busted 2 caps in his ass. And this is a story that a politician has decided to tell in her memoir. And she recounts it in a chapter titled, "Bad Day to Be a Goat." Also, by the way, the fact that this, according to her, this is like a well-known political controversy in South Dakota going back years. Like they've been debating the smelly goat that Kristi Noem killed for years now. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if people in South Dakota, when they heard this story, were like, "Oh yes, the story about the goat again." I'm not sure if it's that well known, but it's pretty great if it is. I'm starting to get the impression that this whole book was just her bragging about killing various animals, interspersed with imaginary, fictionalized retellings of meetings with world leaders that never actually happened. So the whole book is like a murderous, blood-soaked fever dream. I actually might. I will. I'm intrigued. Like, I want to buy a copy of the book now. Like, honest to God, it sounds entertaining at the very least. And we haven't even made it to the best part yet. This is where we go to a clip that informs us that she ended the book by criticizing Joe Biden for his German Shepherd commander, who has attacked several Secret Service agents, drawing blood that actually had to be mopped up countless times. The last line of the book was, quote, "Commander, say hello to Cricket." So this guy continues his roast. This is apparently not a joke. She really ended the book by threatening to kill Joe Biden's dog. I'm officially sold. I'll be pre-ordering my copy as soon as this show is over. And also, I like that this interview was just nothing but the interviewer bringing up one animal after another and asking for her to justify why she killed it or will kill it in the future. And she engages each time. You know, she's like, well, that goat smelled like garbage, and it was annoying my kids. What do you want me to do? Now, granted, when I say I want to read this book, it's because the book, it would seem, is a completely insane train wreck. And that might help her sell copies, but it represents an act of political suicide. I mean, this is something so close to actual self-immolation that watching that interview, I almost expected her to shout, "Free Palestine." She has destroyed herself completely in the most unnecessary, egregious, and hilarious way that we've ever seen. And she does it all in an effort to promote herself. Okay, one final laugh for you guys. What about topics that are entirely serious or highly controversial? Is it okay to joke about those? Generally, if done well, yes. If a subject is heated, that's all the more reason to interject a little humor and diffuse some of the tension. Even if you disagree with the point the joke is making, if it's funny, you should still be able to laugh at it. Maybe even at yourself. That's part of being a healthy adult. So, pit bulls. Oh, I can hear them already. First off, one of my family members owns a pit bull that she adores. Apparently he's very sweet. She even trusts him around her kids. So I'm aware of both sides of this breed. But I've also seen the dark side more than once. My aunt was attacked in her 90s by a pit bull that had attacked at least 2 other people, one of which was a child. It knocked her down while getting the mail, and a neighbor was forced to take a bat to it to get it off her, taking a chunk of her arm with it, all the way to the bone. I also used to go to church with a toddler whose face had been ripped off by the family pit bull. I don't know what led up to the attack, only that this boy of about 3 had no nose, part of his cheek was missing, he had a lot of scars, and a lifetime of plastic surgery ahead of him. Pit bulls can pull between 700 to 1,000 pounds, and sometimes much more. And they have a bite of between 240 and 330 psi, depending on their age and the health of the dog. A leopard's bite, by comparison, is between 300 and 310. My Pomeranians have a bite of between 230 and 290 psi. But the size of their mouth limits the amount of damage they can inflict. If a pit attacks, they do much more damage than most other breeds because they don't let go. And temperament-wise, they were bred for high aggression, to fight large and enraged bulls, though some individuals can be sweet, until they aren't. These severe injuries are no laughing matter. Still, we should be able to discuss how to move forward with an open mind and even a little humor to help us do that. Personally, I'm in favor of letting the breed die out. Not of confiscating pets. If you mandate that all pit bulls have to be fixed, with very expensive fines and threats of confiscation, not euthanasia, for failure to do so, with an even higher fine for producing puppies, then that would be a reasonable compromise. After that, it would just be a matter of waiting it out. This was the first time in years I heard someone make the same argument. Quote, disturbing video circulating yesterday showing a man in Philadelphia being attacked and mauled by a pack of dogs in the middle of the street. The local ABC News affiliate reports that there were 4 dogs involved in the attack. 3 of them were pit bulls. The other was a cane corso who apparently, I guess, fell in with the wrong crowd. So you watch that, the first thing you think is, where's Kristi Noem when you need her? Fortunately, the man did survive that attack. It was an attack that happened to occur on the same week that a 9-year-old girl in Iowa was mauled by a pit bull and sustained serious injuries. The owner of the dog in that case was arrested. And also the same week, 2 pit bulls had to be euthanized after attacking a 58-year-old man in Baltimore. All 3 of these incidents happened only a few weeks after a 3-month-old baby was mauled and killed by the family pit bull in New Jersey. And a few weeks before that, a 35-year-old man was attacked by his pit bull in California, and he did not survive the attack either. Now, it's not especially surprising that pit bulls are responsible for all these attacks. After all, pit bulls and Rottweilers together account for nearly 80% of all fatal dog attacks, even though they comprise less than 10% of the dog population. And the vast majority of those are pit bulls, with Rottweilers coming in a very distant second place. If you go to my Substack articles, Views of an Outsider, you can see the chart he's talking about and what breeds are involved. At this point, I give pictures of the top 9 breeds, with pit bulls way, way distant in first. But they include pit bulls, Rottweilers, German Shepherds, Huskies, Malamutes, Doberman Pinschers, Chows, Great Danes, and St. Bernards. Pit bulls account for 60% of all dog bite injuries, and the injuries they cause are much more likely to be severe. Overall, pit bulls are far more likely to attack and far more likely to cause serious injury or death when they do attack. They are both the most aggressive breed and the breed most capable of inflicting maximum damage. And that's the reason why I've been a very vocal proponent of banning pit bulls. There's no disputing the fact that these dogs are uniquely dangerous. They are, these statistics clearly show, by far and away the most dangerous breed of dog, a breed that is genetically predisposed to aggression. There is a reason why every single one of us, if we see a stray pit bull running down the street, we will be extremely worried if it approaches us. And if we see a stray golden retriever or a lab, a beagle, or any of dozens of other breeds, we'll not be nearly so concerned. I made this argument again yesterday in response to that video, and I got 6,000 responses, and many of them quite angry. Angry at me, I mean, not angry about the pack of dogs mauling that guy. Instead, no, they were angry at me. So a rabid pack of pit bull owners descended on my comment section, accusing me of anti-pit bull bigotry. And they made all the familiar arguments. They said that it's not about the breed, it's about the owner. They said that their own pit bulls were the sweetest little darlings in the world. They said that banning pit bulls would be somehow just like banning guns. They said that there's no such thing as a bad dog, only a bad owner. They made all the arguments that I normally find so absurdly unpersuasive. But this time, I have to admit, I don't change my mind very often, but they really got through to me. I read all these comments of thousands of pit bull owners crying hysterically because I had an opinion they didn't like, and it really affected me. I can't really describe it. I realized the error of my ways. You know, pit bulls might be disproportionately dangerous and far more likely to kill or maim than almost any other breed, but I realize that you pit bull defenders are right. Like, why should that stop you from bringing them into the community. Yes, they might try to eat your neighbor's child, but frankly, that's none of your neighbor's business. And sure, yes, there are plenty of other breeds that are much, much less likely to attack. And even if they do attack, are much, much less likely to do any significant damage. But why shouldn't you skip over all those significantly safer breeds and specifically choose the one that poses the greatest statistical risk to everyone around you, including your family and yourself? Sure, it's true that pit bulls are genetically predisposed to aggression and built to inflict maximum damage, but why should that have any impact on your decision to adopt one? Sure, yes, the risk you take by adopting a pit bull is also a risk that you are forcing everyone around you to take as well, but, why should that matter to you? I can see it all clearly now. It makes sense. I never understood the wisdom of this perspective before, but now I really do. I get it. I get it. In fact, I'm so persuaded that I've decided to take these arguments and apply them to my own life. After all, every pro-pit bull argument could be used to justify the ownership of literally any dangerous animal. And that's why I've decided to go out, and I know it's a little unique, but I've decided to go out and adopt a hippopotamus and keep it at my house, with my children, in my neighborhood, where other people live. Now look, I know what the anti-hippo bigots might say. They'll say that hippos are massive animals that are extremely aggressive and very dangerous, totally insane to keep at your house. They'll claim that it's far too risky to own an animal like that. They'll point out that hippos are the deadliest land mammal on the planet, responsible for killing 500 human beings every year. But that's all propaganda. It's true. The statistics say what they say, but there's no need to worry about the statistics. Hippos may kill 500 people a year, but there are 8 billion people on Earth. Think about this. This is what I said to my neighbors. That means 7,999,999,500 human beings aren't killed by hippos every year. It's estimated that somewhere around 10,000 people globally are killed by lightning strikes every year. And that means you're far more likely to be killed by lightning than by a hippo. So why should my hippo worry you? You see, the statistics don't matter unless they're the weird and random statistics that I decide to use, where I compare an animal to inanimate objects and natural phenomena. So those statistics are extremely important. But the basic, straightforward statistics about how aggressive my animal is, those don't matter at all, you see. And when I decide to take my hippo for a walk in your neighborhood, you may feel concerned. You may perhaps feel that it's unfair that I should bring a highly aggressive and dangerous animal around you and your family, forcing you to inherit the risk that I decided to take with my own life. But what you should understand is, there are no bad hippos, only bad owners. And you might think that this is an argument at least for requiring that hippo owners obtain some sort of license and go through some sort of training, given that I'm admitting that a poorly raised hippo will indeed be a danger to the entire community. But no, I would never even agree to that. I'm putting all of the danger of hippo ownership on the owners, but also not agreeing to any sort of regulation or requirements for those owners. I hope that makes sense. And even if it doesn't, too bad. Look, my hippo is a sweetheart. You may hear all these stories about hippos mauling and attacking people, but I could pull out my phone right now and show you so many photos of my hippo not attacking or mauling anyone. How could hippos be dangerous when I have literally dozens of photos of my hippo not being dangerous? Yesterday, I put a silly hat on a hippopotamus, and it was so cute. Are you seriously trying to tell me that an animal in a silly hat can be dangerous? Come on. It's ridiculous. It's It's impossible. Far too cute to kill anyone. This is airtight logic. And if you don't see that, it's because you're blinded by your anti-hippo prejudices. Besides, telling me that I can't own a hippo is a slippery slope. First, you stop me from owning the most dangerous land mammal in existence. Next thing I know, you're confiscating my guns. You're kicking me out of my house and forcing me to live in the sewer. You see, guns are things that I have a right to own, and a hippo is also a thing. Therefore, I have a right to own the hippo. You see, because the two things are both things. Now, you might claim that they're very different things, but I fail to see the difference. If I draw a Venn diagram with hippo in one bubble and the Glock 19 in the other, that middle intersecting bubble would be full of similarities. Too many to count. First of all, they're both things. Second, well, like I said, there are too many to count. Now, I know what you might be saying. You might be saying, there are so many different pets that you can safely own. Why do you have to go out and adopt the one kind of pet that presents such a unique and singular risk to you, your children, and your neighbors? Why can you just not own a hippo? Why does your desire to own a hippo outweigh everyone else's desire to not be mauled to death by a hippo? Well, the answer is, shut up. I'll do what I want. Your questions are harmful and violent. Look, it may hurt you to be crushed to death in the jaws of my hippo, but it hurts me even more to hear you say mean things about my pet hippo. My hippo can crush your skull, but your anti-hippo rhetoric crushes my soul. And worst of all, it upsets my hippo. And you don't want to upset him. Trust me on that. Anyway, thank you to the pit bull owners who have shown me the wisdom in this line of thinking. I apologize, truly, for all the years I've spent criticizing you. I see now that I was wrong. I was the insane person. I thought that you were all totally and completely insane and irresponsible. I see now that it was me. All of the pit bull critics and the hippo critics are wrong. These 3 hysterical skits were made by the same person. I'm betting most of you know who he is, so there's no need for me to tell you. And if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you. Because although you probably laughed while reading them or listening to them, and would have laughed even harder at the videos, even the mere mention of his name would send many into "that's not funny" tantrums, undoing my entire effort in writing this article, while also proving my point that everyone needs to stop taking seriously funny things and discussing them as though they were serious. Laugh. It's okay. It's even fun. Then laugh at those who are too frigid to laugh themselves and refuse to become them. The next time you see someone being too serious and shaming others for not being as humorless and miserable as they are, in a harmless way, point out how ridiculous they're being and invite them to laugh at themselves. But refuse to surrender life's laughter, no matter how much some try to suck the life out of life. They can't take what you won't surrender. At the end of the article, you can see a list that I thought your kiddos might enjoy about the deadliest bites on Earth. So if you are ready to go, I thank you for listening and invite you to come back next week. If you want to hear the list, I'll go ahead and include it here. Humans have a bite of 120 to 160 psi, meaning pounds per square inch, while African leopards have nearly double that at 300 to 310 psi. A lion more than doubles that at more than 650 psi. The top 3 dog bites rank next on our list, with camgulls topping that list at 743 psi. The Siberian tiger comes in next at 1,000 pounds per square inch, with the Bengal tiger barely outbiting him at 1050. Hyenas come next at 1,100 psi. Grizzly bears have between 975 and 1,200 psi with an average bite of 1160. The gray wolf maxes out at 1200 psi, with between 406 and 1000 psi being the average for other kinds of wolves. At 1200 psi, the polar bear is hot on the heels of the silverback gorilla at 1300 psi, which is almost as strong as a bull shark at 1350. The seventh strongest bite in the world is the jaguar at 1500 psi. The hippopotamus ranks sixth, but at 1800 psi, it has the strongest bite of all land mammals. The American alligator ranks fifth at 2125 psi, while the great white shark takes fourth with an impressive 4,000 pound per square inch bite. The bronze medal goes to the Nile crocodile with 5,000 psi, and the salt crocodile takes the silver with a mind-boggling 7,700 psi bite. And our gold medalist blows them all out of the water with 19,000 pounds per square inch to his bite. The wolves of the sea, orca killer whales, have the strongest bite on the planet. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and I hope you enjoyed having a few laughs.